So you could say Pixar is in a bit of a transition period these days. The end of their sequel-heavy days seem to be in sight, with only Incredibles 2 and Toy Story 4 before a line of only original films for the foreseeable future thereafter. But we're still in the midst of their softer run of the 2010s thus far, now 4 films since Inside Out, their last top-tier film. Folks, I never stop appreciating how lucky I was to have Pixar masterpieces regularly through my younger years, films that all got better with age. So it's fitting, in a sense, that Coco harkens back to the films of early Pixar. Does it pay off? For the most part, yes it does. This telling of a story in a way only possible through animation is Pixar through and through. There's life left in them yet, ironically for a film about the dead. So, what actually happens? 12-year-old Miguel's extended family has a total ban on music for personal reasons dating back several generations, so, funnily enough, he has to keep his love of music and his ambition to be a guitarist a secret. This frustration builds to a peak on the Mexican holiday, Dia de Muertos. After a nasty falling out with his family, a well-intended slip-up curses him straight to the other side of the Day of the Dead. For wouldn't you know it, all that ancestry stuff about dead relatives visiting them on the holiday that he dismissed outright turns out to be true. With a ticking clock until Miguel's stuck in the land of the dead forever, he seeks a way to return back home without having to forsake his musical inclinations. For the sake of those that haven't seen it yet, a whole 2 months after the film's American release date, and 3 months after its bow in Mexico, for staggered international release dates continue to cling tighter than a limpet, I'll leave the plot at that. One of the most surprising strengths of the film is how most of the twists and turns the plot takes, which seem glaringly obvious in hindsight, are framed carefully enough as to come across as surprising. Not all the time, but even when I pulled to doubt what was likely to be revealed, I kept getting surprised by details that changed the focus. The film understands that it's not what happened that it's important, but how and why. Unfortunately, the manipulative emotional moments end up being very obviously telegraphed, which doesn't totally rob them of effect, though it does distract as they approach. Something really worth commending is that the film adopts a matter-of-fact approach to how it depicts the sights and sounds of the land of the dead. It's easy for a delightful new world to be presented as so fanciful that it doesn't feel real even within the film's mise-en-scène, but the approach here helps make it all the more tangible. They don't disregard the moments of awe, but this approach feeds into the character-driven approach the film takes, and not just in its writing. Something it does that may come across as counterintuitive is in the composition and framing, especially when characters fill the widescreen canvas either from the waist up or from head to toe. Populating its shots this way may seem at odds for a film filled with fantastic sights only possible in animation, but it makes the characters, and the events happening to them as they interact with each other and the world around them, more believable and palpable, which is the ultimate goal of fantasy, from the make-believe to believably intertwine with the realistic. And this character-driven approach, typical of Pixar but especially effective here, is in full force throughout, enough for even the atypical third-act action chase sequence to work despite its stock structure. Now, if the characters don't really work for you, the film could ring a little hollow. For the most part, I don't see that happening, though, because of how well the film infuses its bright fantasy into the holiday tradition of the Day of the Dead, which has practically no presence in English language cinema. I know next to nothing about it, or the Mexican values of family imparted throughout, but it all feels right, which certainly fits in with the film's reception within Mexico. Imagine if you knew nothing about Christmas, and there were no behind the scenes of Christmas films around, and then one of the best came along. It doesn't matter that I know nothing about the holiday, the film makes it for me. In some ways, it does for the actual, non-tourist local culture of Mexico what the end of Toy Story 3 did for our toys. Don't be surprised if you want to pull up pictures of your departed loved ones or extended family after watching it. We live in an interesting place with the animation of Pixar these days. Their computers are still top of the pyramid, technically, in the CG game, but the days of big advances still seem to be behind us. That said, there's no denying how gorgeous the film is. In going for broke on the iconography of Dia de Muertos, the film is full not just of brightly coloured skeletons with colourful visual details, but of buildings of varying shades defying gravity and spatial logic. They do some fantastic stuff with particles, as demonstrated marvellously by the bridge of autumn petals first seen in the teaser trailer. The humans are another step forward for the studio, ranging from flesh getting closer and closer to photorealism to the depiction of scrawny pre-adolescent limbs and versatile facial expressions of its main character. I don't know that it's all that creative as a piece of visual art, not the way some other animated films in 2017 have been, but it's still never less than visually enthralling, from the colours down. Accepting the way its script feels like a dead ringer for the backstory heavy approach common to recent animation, Coco is classic Pixar through and through. The gentle, cheerful comedy, even when the punchline is obvious, reigns like the Pixar of old, down to the animals along for the ride, and the voice acting supplies many excellent performances, demonstrating once again how superb Pixar is at matching voices to their characters rather than the other way around. And the music really works, always feeling authentic with a clear distinction between source music and more traditional scoring, even if you're not the biggest fan of acoustics. Aside from the aforementioned obvious emotional beats and such, another notable flaw is an occasional meandering structure. Most of the first half of the time spent within the land of the dead comes across as somewhat meandering and unfocused. I know, it's the same thing I always cite, the film's middle needs to be compressed, but Pixar is really good at arriving at the runtimes naturally, so the lack of a tight focus at times here is a nagging issue. I don't know that I would put this as top tier Pixar, but it is, unquestionably, a great film. Coco would impress even in a strong year for animation, and in 2017, it glides to the top of the studio efforts almost effortlessly. It's a magical piece of enthralling cinema, all told, despite its flaws. So, unless you have an active problem with a film shamelessly looking to reduce you to your barest emotions, there's a lot to love in Coco, even if, for now, Pixar can only churn out films as great as this once every several films, I'll still take it. Animated cinema like this should be treasured, no matter the circumstances. That puts a wrap on 2017. Quite the mixed year for mainstream stuff, especially compared to the previous 2 years, but big studio animation often ebbs and flows. That said, here's my rank scoreboard. Feel free to absorb and dissect it. 2018 certainly looks to be a more promising slate, if not as strong as some years past, so we'll see. I won't be committing to reviewing everything this year, but I'll get to everything important and worthwhile. More details on that in an update video soon. As before, check IMDb for release dates in Ireland or the United Kingdom to know when I can see and review them. Leave a comment on any video, my channel, or my social media platforms if you want to know whether I'll be seeing and reviewing any particular film. I answer all questions I get, folks. Thanks for watching the review, folks. As always, I'm your host, Mike Culligan of Cartoon Karma. If you like what you saw, leave a like or a comment, that'd be pretty neat. Subscribing will be even neater. Or you can check out my other videos, where I cover animation of all shapes and sizes. Perhaps even follow the channel on Facebook and Twitter. All your choice, but it sure brings a smile to my face. Until next time, folks.